Okay, let's start. Thank you very much for joining this workshop. For sure, we'll have in the coming minutes some more people joining, as we have over 100 registrations, which is good. And welcome to this workshop. It's a joint workshop between FAIRsFAIR and OpenAIRE. National policy and support actions for research data skills. So to talk a little bit about the impact and the experiences. So thank you very much for joining and for the speakers to contribute with sharing the experiences and the expertise, and to all your participants also. Thank you for joining and to be interested. Before we start with presentations and the presentation of the agenda, in between where more people joining, some housekeeping. So the event, just for clarification, will be recorded, and we will make these recordings available in the channels of both initiatives, FAIRsFAIR project and OpenAIRE, but mainly in this event page where we will put the presentations and the recordings available. I ask you to keep your microphones and cameras off during our presentations, during the speakers' presentations, but then you please, during the Q&A, just open your cameras and microphones, and of course during the breakout sessions that we are going to have, please have your microphone and cameras open. We can just communicate using the chat. So this is a Zoom meetings facility, so you can use the chat. We don't have Q&A component here, but we can talk in parallel, let's say, using the chat. If you just want to interact with participants, we are going to share some links, etc. So I think it's always useful to have these parallel conversations in the chat. We have I have already put it in the chat, and I will put again. So we have a document for collaborative notes. We have people that will be in charge of that, but be aware that we have this, and in fact we use this document to put the links for the presentations. The majority of the presentations of the speakers today are already there, linked, so which is good. So you can check this link here. If you want to share, we don't have a specific hashtag for this workshop, just use FAIRsFAIR and OpenAIRE hashtags, or you can mention both initiatives. So these are the housekeeping information that I would like to share with you, and feel free to share your thoughts in the chat and ask questions during the right moments. So, and welcome for this workshop. So the idea is to have here a 2.5 hours discussion about the national policies and support actions for research data skills. There are important initiatives being developed at the national level in some research communities, in some institutions, higher education institutions. That is also our focus here. So it's important to share those experiences, and this is the main goal. This is a joint workshop in FAIRsFAIR. Berg, my colleague Berg from the European Universities Association, will detail the context of this workshop in FAIRsFAIR project plan, but we have a series of FAIRsFAIR stakeholder workshops, and this is a stakeholder workshop. We wanted to do with people that are in charge of national policy, national developments, national strategies and roadmaps toward research data management skills. So this is why we have done this together with OpenAIRE. So OpenAIRE is a key player due to all the experiences of the past projects, the work with the National Open Access Desk to work towards the training in open science, to work to a cultural change for open science practices. So National Open Access Desks were quite important during the projects from OpenAIRE, and now also in the OpenAIRE AMCA organization that is established with already a good number of members. We have representation in different countries, and we have in fact a standing committee dedicated to training activities, and we have organized this workshop together. So so you are aware of the main objectives. So we will look into the national initiatives, discuss some good practices and the impact, and how can we leverage on those experiences and initiatives, the strategies at the national level, the roadmaps that we have. Discuss a bit the role and responsibilities of different organizations. So we want to have a focus on universities, but different players in the national landscape, and I think it's a very good opportunity also to have this debate. So for that we have 2 sessions, and then plus the breakout groups. But now I give the floor to my colleague Bert from the European Universities Association, that is also organizing this workshop, to present the context, let's say, about this workshop in the context of FAIRsFAIR project.
Thank you, Pedro. I'm hoping everyone can hear me well. Good afternoon for most of us. Perfect. I'll be sharing my screen with a couple of slides. But really, as Pedro, my colleague, already announced, what I'm here to briefly do as an introduction is take a little step back from just a stakeholder workshop we're doing today, and just give you the broader context as to why this workshop exists, what is sort of the context in which this is taking place. My name is Brecht Stanen. I am from the European University Association, and we are...
want to change the display settings, you can click on the top, because it's in display the presenter mode. Yes. Change, yeah.
This is better?
Perfect.
Thanks so much. So, as I was saying, we are doing this in the context of the FAIRsFAIR project. And the FAIRsFAIR project, I'm just giving you this first slide. This slide, as Pedro already mentioned, is available online, but this is to give you an indication that this is the Fostering Fair Data Practices in Europe project. It's a 3-year Horizon 2020 project that started back in March 2019, which means that right now we've passed sort of the 2-year mark. We're now in the last year of this project, and you can see that we are aiming for quite a bit of sort of outputs by the end of this project. I'm just giving this as a reference of the entire project, that is the context in which we are. Then zooming in a little bit more as to why this workshop. We come here to the different work packages, and we are right now in work package 7, which is focusing on fair data science curricula and professionalization. It's one of the work packages that tries to bring the project as close as possible to universities and all the relevant stakeholders as possible. In terms of objectives, I am giving you here like sort of the full breadth of objectives of this work package. One really important one is the last one, which is ultimately we are here to support embedding fair data education in university programs, bachelor, master level, and also doctoral training in the universities. And as I mentioned, we've passed the 2-year mark with this project. That means that a lot of the other objectives in terms of analyzing the landscape and developing a competence framework, we have been doing that work for the last 2 years, and now we are making the switch to building practical tools based on that knowledge, based on that work that we have gathered. And you can see that in this, I think, very important slide, is ultimately what this work package is trying to do is to develop practical tools for universities to help them professionalize fair data science curricula at these levels, bachelor, master, doctoral level. You can see in the first 2 years, again, of this project, we have already done a survey of universities to get the state of play across Europe. We've done desk research, developed a briefing, developed a competence framework that is not standing in isolation, but is very much interacting and complementary to other frameworks that are already out there. And then towards the right of the slide, you can see where we are headed next by the end of 2021. By the end of this year, in December, we will turn all of that into practical tools that universities can pick up and start using for fair data education at their institution. That means that there is going to be an adoption handbook with model curriculum, and there's going to be a complementary report with good practices that gives a good indication of what are the initiatives that are already happening in Europe right now, and tries to bring those together and draw some lessons from them. So that's sort of the framework in which we are. We are now headed towards those practical tools. And as a last point, you're already at the stakeholder workshop, but there are a couple of other opportunities to engage with us. You can always get the latest state of play there on the FAIRsFAIR website under events. But for this work package, so specifically for these topics, you will be interested to know that in June, we are doing a book sprint on the adoption handbook, one of the practical tools that we are developing by the end of this year. So you can have your input there as well. Plus, we will have another stakeholder workshop, I think as Pedro already mentioned, but also a number of university workshops where we sort of delve in deeper into a couple of topics related to this for universities. For example, at the end of May, you can see that we have a 2-day workshop with the University of Milan. So again, with my colleagues, Pedro and Andre, working specifically at the doctoral level. How do you implement research data management and fair data skills at the doctoral level? That being said, I can only thank you for your attention, and I will give the floor back to my colleagues.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So let's start. I just have 30 seconds to detail to you the agenda, and then I give the floor to my colleague Irina Kushma to share this first session. So just for us to be aware of what we are going to have, let's say three main moments. One first section part that we dedicate to national level initiatives. Okay, we will have 3 cases. Then in the Q&A or in the chat, we can share other experiences, and then later in the working group. France, Greece, and Ireland initiatives will be represented in this first session. Then we go to a part that we look carefully to university use cases with initiatives in Germany and Switzerland. And then we have an overview by Irina Kushma about the report from the EOSC Executive Board Skills and Training Working Group. It is important to have a look and to remind ourselves about what are the main conclusions from that report. And then we open the floor to breakout discussions in 4 groups. So think about that. So we will have 2 groups that we can discuss about the national roadmaps and platforms. We will have 2 or 3 questions for these groups. One group dedicated more to institutional things, to universities, higher education initiatives, and another one more dedicated to community-driven initiatives, research community-driven initiatives. So think about, so we will have 4 groups. You will choose the group. You can choose the group. So think about these 4 groups that we have. You have also the information in the notes, in the document, so you can check. But now let's go to the first session. So we are now aware of what we want to have. I will keep this slide here, Irina, and you can present.
Thanks a lot, Pedro. So let's talk about national initiatives supporting RDM and FAIR data skills developments. And we have 3 talks, and we suggest to go alphabetically by the name of the country: France, Greece, Ireland. And I'd like to invite Benedict Kunstiger from CNRS and Couperin to talk about experiences in France, national policy and initiatives supporting RDM and FAIR data skills development. So over to you, Benedict.
Thank you. Hello. I will share my screen. Okay. Okay. So I'm Benedict Kunstiger from CNRS, and I'm in charge of the team assistance, user assistance for the French Open Archive HAL. and I'm working with Competence, the French node of OpenAIRE. I will present the French national policy about open science, and especially the policy about generalizing open science and research data management skills, with highlighting productions in France. Open science is now one of the priorities of French science policy, involving a strong part on structuring and sharing research data. In 2018, the French National Plan of Open Science asserted in its third commitment a strong policy about generalizing open science skills with these 3 points. Inform scientific communities about the implications of the French Digital Republic Act on the open dissemination of science publications and data. Create an open science certification for postgraduate schools and develop research data skills, especially through online training courses aimed at the scientific community. In support of this policy, the French government appointed a chief data officer for the French Ministry of Higher Education and Research, and a network of data officers is being developed in French universities. At national level, the French National Plan leads to the creation of COSO, the Committee for Open Science, with 4 main colleges. One of them is the Skills and Training College, which aim is to identify the skills applied to all dimensions of open science. The college promotes exchange of best practices and provides information for the COSO website to help the community appropriate the right resources and methods. It targets particularly young researchers and research support staff. The Skills and Training College has published several publications, as you can see, called Share Open Science, with feedbacks from various institutions and universities, and focus on stories and innovative practices. And beyond the national policy, universities and research institutions have set up active policies to support open science. All these policies highlight the need to develop skills in FAIR data. For example, CNRS launched a roadmap for open science and a plan for research data in 2020, which underlined the need to develop skills in FAIR data in terms of data management and data science. The French landscape is a rich and complex one because several bodies are involved in training and support for open science and research data management, for research support staff, librarians, or researchers. The EOSC network, with 7 regional scientific and technical information training units, provides on-site or distance learning courses for research support staff, librarians, and researchers. INIST, the Institute for Technical and Scientific Information of CNRS, provides tools and training sessions too. And national networks or research institutions services are part of the landscape. As part of the National Plan for Open Science, the French Ministry supports the RDA France Group, an Europe national node, that coordinates the French participation and disseminates RDA recommendations. RDA France organizes meetings, workshops, and training events on management of data or repository certification, for instance. All the institutions, French institutions, pay a strong attention to improve skills about research data management. Nowadays, it's a critical issue for all of them, how to improve skills of research staff to support researchers. Here are some examples of organizations that are working on it. Competence, the national node of OpenAIRE in France, has an open science college, including a data working group. It works particularly on these questions by making surveys on data management in institutions and universities, by organizing webinar cycles to exchange local experiences about RDM training and by publishing good practices and so on. The CNRS Working Group on Data is a network that organizes webinars on different topics about research data management, data papers, for example, and have published recently a good practices guide for RDM. CIRAD, another research institution, developed a well-known website on data management. So despite this complex and fragmented framework, several initiatives and projects are built, often shared at national level. I will present some examples of these initiatives. For the past few years, universities' librarians have been provided support for researchers to set up data management plans for funded projects. INIST from CNRS have launched a tool called OPIDOR to provide models of DMP coming from funder agencies or universities or European Commission and so on. A directory of services in each institution of training and support librarians is available in a list provided by the Working Group Open Science of a French consortium, Couperin. INIST and URFIS network provide a website called Doranum, a set of free reusable resources, fact sheets, videos, digital learning materials, which help with research data management. Resources are available for everyone who wants to improve skills on all topics of research data management. Lorraine University has developed a strong policy to support the development of skills in FAIR data management. They provide research data management courses for researchers and have published 2 good practices sheets and recommendations for trainers on the website of Couperin. How to train PhD students to research data management and how to improve awareness of SSH researchers to research data. PhD students and young researchers have been particularly targeted. Lille University has published a guide within COSO, Passport for Open Science, a practical guide for PhD students that will be used in doctoral schools. It's a step-by-step practical guide for PhD students to help them build up open science skills and implement open science principles. One section of the guide deals with making research data open. University of Lille organizes French and English training sessions for early researchers in research data management, how to write a data management plan and how to disseminate data in keeping with FAIR principles. With a method, practice makes perfect. After all, other initiatives emphasize a discipline-based approach. For example, as the reference documentation centers in chemistry and physics, the libraries of Lyon University and Grenoble University decided to work together to improve research data management in these 2 fields. In SSH community, the French infrastructure Humanum provides support and training courses for researchers. This discipline-based approach responds to specificities and needs in the communities. In conclusion, we saw that France has a top-down approach with the National Plan for Open Science to determine the roadmap, set objectives, create incentives, and coordinate actions, in particular by setting up a committee for open science, the COSO, but a bottom-up approach too, insofar as national policy is essentially based on initiatives and projects from universities and research institutions. COSO finalized and published in March the feasibility study for a national and generic service for simple data with 3 implementations scenarios. Recommendation of this study highlights the need to support researchers to improve the quality of data and metadata, the need to upgrade skills of trainers and researchers, and to build a strong national network of support staff to assist, advise, and train researchers with local expertise. How improving skills of research staff to support researchers in research data management, this issue will become even more a central one. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Benedict. It was very comprehensive. We have 2 questions, and if you don't mind, I'll read them to you. So the first one is from Irina, and it's about budgets and funding. What is the budget for National Open Science Plan in France? I mean, public expenditures are insured by the ministry. And is there any specific budget for skills building, or how funding is allocated, if at all?
No, there is no specific budget for skills and training, but there are some funding projects from the ministry about that, and with a budget for COSO. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. And the way it works, usually the ministry announces calls for proposals, right?
Yeah.
With specific budgets and for specific activities. Thanks. And another question is from Bilana. What's approximate duration of PhD training sessions, courses in France, in number of hours, if you know? Like roughly.
I don't know really. I don't know. It's on maybe several years, because PhD students have 3 years for PhD, so it's on this time, you know, they can have some courses, different courses with target now open science. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other questions, and I hope we can discuss more in the breakout room. Okay. So now moving on to Greece, we'll have Ellie Papadopoulou from Athena Research Center and OpenAIRE node in Greece, and she'll share RDM and FAIR data skills experiences in Greece. Over to you, Ellie.
Thank you, Irina. And that was a very inspiring first presentation from France. It's really good to see how far you can come if you, from the point of view of the top-down approach, following a top-down approach. So ours is different in Greece. It's more of a bottom-up approach, but we are now moving towards having a mutual, let's say, hybrid approach, both top-down and bottom-up. And I'm here to let you know how we got there, and what were the methods that we used and so on for RDM and FAIR data skills in Greece. And again, yes, I'm Ellie Papadopoulou. Sorry, I forgot to mention that, but Irina introduced me. I work for Athena Research Center, and for Athena Research Center is the OpenAIRE Greek node. So I'm also involved in those activities of the nodeship. A little bit about OpenAIRE in Greece. As I mentioned, Athena Research Center is the Greek node, but also we collaborate and have a partnership, an open science partnership with the Hellenic Academic Libraries Link. And under the OpenAIRE AMKE organization, Athena is the regular member and HeaLink is the associate member. And it's important to have those kind of partnerships under the OpenAIRE umbrella. Because as you can see, Athena, for example, supports all the kind of activities at different levels, at the national level, at the institutional level, and also the exchange of knowledge and experiences with from the national to the European level. And it does so by holding training events and ensuring that research repositories are following open access best practices so that they are compliant with the open access mandates, similarly to all the different stakeholders and the projects. So European research coordinators can comply with all the different mandates, and also for policy, in terms of policy, whoever, either it is a funder or it is a research institution, if they want to adopt the policy, we are there to support that as well. And mainly, as you can see, Athena focuses on the research sector. So HearLink focuses primarily on the academia, so that they enrich, let's say, those links with the academic support staff and the researchers and students. So they promote the repositories that they have. They make sure that the services, they integrate services, data services to make them more fair enabling, let's say. They have connections with the rectors and they try to influence those policies, institutional policies for universities. We focus on our work in OpenAIRE focuses on 3 pillars and has been for the past 10 years now. This is a model that has been used and it's very successful, and that's why we have also embedded it in our national approach. And as you can see, we have we work on services, on making them interlinked with the European ecosystem. We work on policies so that we align what we do at the national level with the European trends and developments, and training, of course, to enhance the capacity of our researchers. Training also involves services, training on services and training on policies, apart from practices. So we'll see in a minute how this works. So skills and training, we are targeting hard skills, both hard skills and soft skills, as you can see here, in terms of data management. So computational skills and data management skills that have to do with how to use the Unix shell and so on. But also soft skills like how to write data management plans, what are the ethical perspectives, the ethical perspectives of open science, and what needs to be ensured before we can reuse or we can use something in our own research and so on. But also we try to bring the attention to learning theories so that the support staff that we support as OpenAIRE knows how to better communicate and integrate learning theories in their own activities, and also to be to follow, like to be all the stakeholders to have a kind of a leadership that they need in order to support open science. Those skills, you can see, are integrated in the activities that we do. For example, we have workshops, we organize workshops and meetings to spread awareness to all the stakeholders, the scientific stakeholders, in order to prepare everyone for the Horizon Europe and the EOSC. And we do that by holding monthly workshops, also in collaboration with Cyprus, with the Cyprus colleagues. We have landscape reviews to understand where we have, how to prioritize things, and where we could identify any gaps, for example, on data stewardship, what we can do to further integrate those kind of skills in Greece. And also the feedback forms after those workshops are very important and help us again to prioritize and to go to the interest of the audience, the participants on open science and RDM issues that they want us to highlight more next month. In terms of capacity building, we follow the train the trainer approach, of course, and also we provide, let's say, trainings for professionals and already professionals or new professionals that are now called to support open science and research data management, and they need to enrich their knowledge and skills and want to know what resources are out there in order for them to do that. For example, for academic librarians, we have held the first, let's say, train the trainer event. It had 4 modules, where on the 4 modules we introduced academic librarians to the basic concepts of research data management. We showed them what are the new things that they need to know about data management plans, for example, about any computational tools that the researchers might want to use, and they should be aware of how to better support them, and also what are the resources that we have. For example, in OpenAIRE we have a pool of resources and tools that they can use and enrich their websites, the library website, or the LibGuides. For service providers, again, we are holding training events so that we show them what are the different elements that they have to that they can incorporate in order to implement the FAIR principles in their services and enhance the compatibility, let's say, with FAIR principles, and also how to onboard their services in EOSC. And for researchers, of course, we want to promote the best practices, and we show them what are the tools that can facilitate those best practices and their compliance with open science mandates. And capacity building training focuses on open and fair data management, on fair enabling services and EOSC services, and RDM policies. Here are some examples, like, for example, we held a number of workshops together with major key national stakeholders to support COVID-19 research, and OpenAIRE, Athena and OpenAIRE provided the perspective of open access and open science. So that was what we did here. Training networks, we are active members in a number of training networks like the Carpentries, Elixir, Converge, both thematic oriented and horizontally oriented. We support ECRs through our membership in RDA. So we are part of the Research Data Alliance, and we chair the interest group that has to do with early career researchers and try to support them in their endeavors. We have some tools like Argos for DMPs and Amnesia for anonymizations of data, that we also hold workshops to inform people and to show them hands-on sessions to show them how they can use those tools and integrate in their everyday practices. And also we are very, let's say, sensitive of how knowledge is also communicated outside the research sector and academia, the research sector, and how citizens can participate, let's say, in scientific projects. We're not alone in this. OpenAIRE is not alone in this. We collaborate with different initiatives and different projects. Like, for example, at the EOSC level, these are the 2 initiatives, projects that we collaborate. The first one is Helix. It's the Hellenic Data Service, and the Helix assumes the national implementation of EOSC in Greece. So it has services for open and fair data management, which are interlinked with other national infrastructures, and we, together with them, we provide training on data deposit and analysis. And for NIFOS, there is both technical and strategic, let's say, approach that is followed, and we collaborate with NIFOS to coordinate the community building activities of open science communities in Greece, and also to support the services onboarding to EOSC. The open science community that we have built in collaboration, OpenAIRE in collaboration with Helix and now with NIFOS, involves those kind of stakeholders. They are internal stakeholders, let's say, if we see it from a policy analysis view. We have internal stakeholders who collaborate, but also external, like the epistemic community, who are the libraries, the academic networks that provide hardware, networks, computing computing infrastructures and so on, but also domain-specific management services through the research infrastructure or other initiatives that support other elements of open science, like the GFOS, which is for open source and free software. So we have collaborated with those stakeholders, and we report back to the ministries where we are called to do that. And this is where the connection exactly happens at the national level of what I've already mentioned in my presentation. In our report, sorry, this is something. Sorry. So through this collaboration with the open science community, we have worked, and this is the first outcome of our work. It's a joint proposal for a national open science plan, which was the derivative of our of a long, let's say, long-lasting discussions where everyone brought everyone brought their perspective in the table, and we tried to see how we could better meet their needs of research infrastructures, of all different types of stakeholders. And as you can see here, we have also foreseen in this proposal for a national open science plan, we have also foreseen specific actions for training. One of them is, for example, to have a national open science support office, jointly coordinated by all of us, to strengthen this communication and the support provided to researchers, and also other programs like having an undergraduate and postgraduate courses, and also more technical capacity building activities as well. To further support, let's say, those activities that we do in this under this framework, this collaborative framework, we are also, Athena is member of the National Coalition for Digital Skills and Jobs, and we contribute. The National Coalition for Digital Skills and Jobs is let's say, works to organize training events in Greece and to understand what are the different certifications that need to be realized where there is the need, and we contribute there on those topics, on the topics of data management, digital data curation and stewardship. And we do that also by being a member of the Digital Competence Certification Community of Practice, which is linked to the DigiConnect and the Digital Single Market. And there we also try to communicate the needs from the research and the academic perspective, those digital skills that have to do, for example, with EOSC. And we use this report as a major point of reference in doing so, the report of the EOSC Training Skills and Working Group that will actually hear later today. And that was for me. Yes, thank you very much. And I'm happy to also let you know about implementation when this happens.
Thanks a lot, Ellie. That was very interesting. And what I like in your approach is that your training activities are also community building activities. I think that's very interesting. And we do have two questions. So the first one is from Valerie. What do leadership skills mean from an open science perspective?
Yes, okay. Thank you, Valerie, for the question. That's a very good one. Like, for example, I mentioned that we held a training for academic librarians. Academic librarians haven't, let's say, not all of them have realized that they have to go out there and liaise with different stakeholders inside the universities. So we try to guide them in order to do so. So this we consider it to be a leadership skill. Like you have to know what you can do with what you have in your let's say institution. You have to we have methods that we are using to enable them to understand what are the needs in the data services in their institutions, so that they are more prepared and they know what to build and where to how to prioritize and those kind of things. So leadership for internal and external lobbying, not only for lobbying, but also for building data services in their institution.
Thanks a lot. And there is also a question from Patrick. You mentioned bottom-up components. How are indeed researchers engaged in drafting open science practices, in particular in social science and humanities? I am not sure I understand the question correctly. Yes, most of what I mentioned were bottom-up approaches. And they are not, the researchers are not involved in drafting the practices. Sorry if that was misunderstood. We get their interest. We get their interest and we understand their needs. So we try to build all our activities around those needs. And social science and humanities, we collaborate with SODANET, which is the research infrastructure in Greece. Thanks a lot, Ellie. It was wonderful. And our next talk is about national-led initiatives supporting RDM and FAIR data skills development in Ireland. And over to you, Chiara.
Thanks, Irina. So hi, everyone, and thank you very much for the opportunity for me to talk about the Irish experience of open science skills development. What I'll talk about today is a little bit about the National Open Research Forum, which is the body that's taking a national approach in Ireland to open science. And then I'll talk a little bit about the working group that I co-chair with my colleague Sean Harnett. And that working group is specifically on skills and competencies in open science. So I'll talk a bit about our work so far, our planned work, and overall aims and objectives. Just to give you a little bit of background about myself, I'm the Deputy Librarian at the University of Limerick. So open research isn't the core function of my job. I'm just part of the national committees and groups focused on the area. And as I said, I'm co-chair of the North Skills and Competencies Working Group. So just a little bit about the body in Ireland that is taking a national approach to open research. It's called NORF, which stands for National Open Research Forum. It was established in 2017 to drive the agenda for open research in Ireland. It published a national framework on the transition to an open research environment in 2019. Its role is to propose national actions to address the challenges of changing the Irish research system to strengthen, promote, and better support open research, as outlined in the framework. So in late 2020, a number of working groups were set up as part of NORF, and these have representation from higher education, colleges, further education, research active bodies across the Republic of Ireland. And the objective of all of these working groups and of NORF itself is to develop a national action plan for the transition to an open research environment. So a little bit then about the working group that I co-chair. Skills obviously underpins all of the framework, but the area of focus of our working group, which are specifically articulated in the framework under the heading of skills development, are around taking a national approach or exploring a national approach towards a standardized framework for open research skills, a national approach towards accreditation of training programs, and developing or exploring the possibilities around providing a national open research training program for researchers. So our focus to date has really been on open science training for researchers themselves, but developing professional expertise in the trainer space, in the data stewardship space, is also a national priority. So the work that we've done so far is our working group, and all of the working groups in North have done a national landscape scan to describe right now the picture in Ireland when it comes to open science and open research. Part of that for us was an international scan, desk-based, of reports and work that's been done in this area to put ourselves in the European context and the global context. And then the second part of our scan was a survey where we reached out to our colleagues in universities and colleges and research bodies and asked them to describe the open research training activity that was going on in their institutions. We got a good response in terms of Ireland is quite a small country and the number of universities and colleges and institutes of technology wouldn't be high. So we had a good response to describe that picture. So just to give you a sense of what that looks like in Ireland right now, we found that all institutions provide open research training in some form, but it's very varied. So in some institutions, some universities, it can be there can be quite a good bit of it. In others, it's very limited. It does appear that libraries and librarians are taking the lead here, but there is a good degree of collaboration with other units like the Research Office, Human Resources, Information Technology. In terms of the skills being provided, as I said, there isn't a framework that's been adopted or a standardization here, but generally the kind of training that people reported delivering came under the umbrella of overall research skills and research support, and then more specifically open access publishing, fair data, data management plans, research integrity, responsible metrics, copyright and licensing. I would say more the soft skills, more so than the hard computing skills at this stage are being delivered. And then in terms of the resources that trainers are using, again, lots of variety here. There isn't consistent resources being used across the country, but the ones that were used or were reported to be used was the Foster Plus Toolkit, Mantra from Edina, Epigeum, publisher provided resources, and a lot of in-house materials being created locally in different institutions and groups. So we found in our landscape scan a lot of challenges and gaps. The fragmented and uncoordinated approach across institutions and nationally is a challenge for us as we try to take a national view and a national approach. But within each institution's lack of resources was cited as one of the major obstacles. It is very much open science, and support and training in open science is evolving. It's at the very early stages, I think, in most institutions in Ireland. So it's not well financed. Staffing is varied. So the bigger institutions have staff within the research support kind of umbrella, and then smaller institutions are stretched. There might be one role with wearing a lot of hats, and skills provision can be a very small part of that. There's also, our respondents cited a lack of strategic focus and perhaps understanding at senior management levels when it comes to open research and open science. And as is the case with all skills development, in the absence of new posts, upskilling existing staff in these areas is a challenge, as is the difficulty around engaging researchers with open science skills and development, which is where rewards and incentives come into play. So in terms of where our working group is going next in the context of the national approach, we've completed the landscape scan. We're now in the phase of developing policy briefs where we look at options around those three areas of focus, so accreditation frameworks and a national training plan or program. And we are looking at activities that have some success already that we can investigate further and perhaps build on or use as models. So for example, in accreditation, we found 4 accredited modules for structured PhD researchers in the universities in Ireland. And these are part of an element of research support modules that is devoted to open science. There's also a digital badges scheme for non-structured PhDs in operation in one institution. In terms of frameworks, ideally we would not want to reinvent the wheel, so we will look at frameworks that exist already And in terms of approaches to national training, again, we're looking at approaches to national training in Ireland and abroad that we could build on. So it's very useful for me to be here today to hear about what's going on elsewhere. So I'd just like to thank you for your attention, acknowledge the members of my working group and my co-chair, Sean. We're very happy to be contacted with any queries, and I've put the details of the National Coordinator for North if anyone wants to find out more about the national initiatives more broadly outside of skills. So I'll hand back to yourself, Irina. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kara. That was excellent. There is an interesting question from Brian. Will the lack of capacity of smaller institutions to engage with open research affect the ability to apply for EU funding in the future?
That's a good question. That's an interesting question. I could speculate that it probably would, but I wouldn't like to speak for the smaller institutions. I think one of the reasons why we're taking a national approach here is to level the playing field to an extent, providing national skills and national kind of policies around open science that would increase staffing, that would be available to researchers regardless of the sizes of their institutions.
Thank you. And what is your timeline with policy briefs? When do you expect them?
It's pretty tight, I have to say. So the North working groups were set up in late 2020. The landscape scan was about a 4-month timeline. The policy briefs are from now until September. And then the final part of it is to feed into a national action plan, feed recommendations into a national action plan, which North hopes will be done by the end of this year.
Thank you so much. Thanks again, Benedict, Ellie, and Chiara. And I'll hand over back to Brecht to look at university perspective.
Thank you. That was fascinating. I've really enjoyed seeing sort of these national level initiatives, and not just the initiatives themselves, but I think also what was very interesting, and I'm seeing people pick up on this in the chat, is sort of, you know, the broader context that these do not exist in isolation. There is a reason behind these things. So that was really interesting. I want to thank the presenters. And now, indeed, moving on to university use cases and experiences on developing research data management and FAIR data skills. In this session, I'm joined by Aude Bax-de Keating by Swiss Universities and Patrick Helling, the University of Cologne in Germany. And we're going to start off in Switzerland, and it's not just Aude Bax-de Keating who's going to join us. It's also her colleagues, Pierre-Yves Bourry from the University of Geneva, Henry Lütke from ETH Zurich, and Giovanni Pizzi from the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Lausanne. I'm going to share my screen and then hand over the word to Aude.
Thank you very much. So let's continue for this second session by asking ourselves these questions. What are some of the current initiatives taking place in Switzerland right now to develop research data management and FAIR data skills? Well, we're going to see this together, and it will be my pleasure to give you some insight of what's happening right now, what is currently taking place, but it will be not an exhaustive presentation. We'll have 3 concrete examples, and there would have been even more than just these examples. We had to take just 3 of them. It's already quite a lot, but I wanted for you to have not me, but the project leaders themselves introducing you to what they're currently doing on the ground, the tool they developed, the training session they put into place, the number of participants they've been training, so you have a concrete sense of what's happening. My name is Aude Bax-de Keating. I work at Swiss Universities as the portfolio manager for the open science program that we have. Right now, we just finalized at the end of our scientific information program, where we've been enhancing and providing funding and incentives for higher education institutions to collaborate together to try to also develop RDM and FAIR data skills. So the 3 examples are some of the projects we have been funded. As I said, they're not all of them. I could have also included open OpenNTS, and many more. But as a matter of time, we're going to concentrate on these 3 ones. So if we go to the next slides, we're going to see, yes, that Henry Lucke will be next with the example of OpenBIS at ETH Zurich. Then it will be Pierre-Yves Burgy with the LCN and OLOS from the University of Geneva. And finally, we will have Giovanni Pizzi from EPFL, who's going to tell us more about AIDA and Materials Cloud. So moving on to the next slides, you will see a little bit where we stand at Swiss University. So we just finalized the scientific information program, and we are now moving on to the next stage of our open science program. And so I'm the portfolio manager of this program. So we are currently now moving on to the first phase, which is focusing on open access. We have released in October 2020 a call for project. We are currently evaluating the project, and we will release information regarding the project selected at the end of May. And we will have a second call for project focusing on open research data as of early 2022. And as you can see, if you move on to the next slides, there may be in the future strategy regarding both aspects and maybe more for the next phase. But this so far, it's still unknown. It's to be confirmed and to be defined. But right now we are in the open science program stage. So if we move on now, I would like to give the word to Henry with his first presentation. Henry, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Aude. Can you hear me well? Thank you. So I'm very happy to present to you this afternoon from Zurich, a little bit our perspectives from the scientific IT services. So our role at ETH Zurich is to support researchers in topics such as computational science, data management, or data science. And in this role, if you go please to the next slide, what we are focusing on a lot is, of course, the support in helping researchers making their data more fair due to the various requirements. And from our perspective, what is a challenge in making data fair, that it actually involves tracking a lot of different types of information. So if you go one further, you see that we cannot only focus on the data, the raw data or the process data, the results to make data fair available, to make them reusable, but there's also a lot of contextual information that has to be kept in mind to keep keep the interpretability of the data, such as the protocols used or the samples that were used in the lab. And the researchers usually keep all these different types of information in very different places, so they don't keep them in the same place. And once they go towards publishing the data, in the end, it's very challenging to bring everything together. And if you go to the next slide, please. For this reason, we have developed already for more than 10 years. Our group has developed a data management system and electronic lab notebook. It's called OpenBIS, which actually has the ability to keep all of these different types of information in a single central place. And I think this is really a big step towards helping researchers to make their data or manage their data in a fair way. If you go to the next slide, please. This are just a couple of features of the system. Obviously, I don't have a lot of time. I just wanted to point out that we have, for example, the ability to represent relationships in the system. So we can represent the relations between samples, protocols, and measurements, for example, which is really critical for keeping track of the flow of the information during an experiment, for example. We can export the data, for example, to data repositories such as Zenodo at the end of the research when the paper is published, for example. And we have also quite a few subject-specific features. Originally, we come out of life sciences, so we have, for example, things like blast search included, or a possibility to represent plasmid maps. If you go to the next slide, please. Yes, so the system itself is available as an open source solution, so everybody can download it and use it. But there's, of course, a challenge in adopting such a system in a research lab. And that is why we also provide kind of support services based on the software. And this may include things like installation, maintenance, or also training and support. And we have different models. So at ETH Zurich, we have established what is called research data nodes, where a single research group has a single OpenBIS server that they're using and that they can fully customize to their hearts, how they like it, basically. Next, please. There's also the option for groups that maybe don't want to go for their own system, but want to have it separately managed, to have what we call a research data hub, where they share this with other groups, for example. And with these both options, we provide a lot of training and consulting. Next, please. And we have recently, or since 2018, extended this also from our university to the national level. And this is the OpenRDM.Swiss program that has been funded by Swiss universities, as Aude mentioned, where we provide a very similar setup. So either on a cloud hosted or self-hosted at the individual institution, together with training and support for the researchers. And I just wanted to mention that obviously we had to also move all of these trainings, which were used to done in face-to-face online during the pandemic over the last year. And we have been very successful there and actually managed now to train more than 100 people per year in using the system, or at least teaching them about the system. And what is for this audience maybe the most relevant, and that's my last kind of point, is that we have, since the start of this year, also the possibility to offer similar services to research groups in Europe as part of the OpenRDM.EU project. This is part of a EGI grant, EGI Foundation grant, where we cannot provide a kind of a long-term support, but at least a help for onboarding and usage of the system, either on a cloud infrastructure hosted by EGI or also self-hosted at the respective institution. Thank you very much. So I think we're moving now over to Pierre-Yves from Geneva.
Yes, thank you. So indeed, I'm pleased to present you the second project, which is DLCM for data lifecycle management, which started actually already in 2015. And in the first phase, which lasted 3 years about, we went through all the life cycle as an exploration. And in the next phase, we went from the prototypes to services, national services. And in June 2019, we could already have a long-term preservation solution for the Geneva State, for the higher education school. And so next year, and we went in production with a national solution, which is called OLOS, which became an association just last January. Next slide, please. So this is clearly a national project because it involves the main universities and Polytechnic School and also Technical School of Switzerland, as you can see here. Next slide. To come back to OLOS, OLOS is a solution for preserving the very long-term research data, and it has been developed indeed this DLCM project. So it is basically a repository for Swiss researchers mainly, but not only. We target also the international community. Servers are in Switzerland. We are of course compliant with FAIR principle, otherwise we will not be here today, and provide the DOI. And we work with any scientific disciplines. Next slide. This is just to show you that the interface is very, well, you can use it already, and a lot of effort has been spent for designing the user interface. And at the end of the last slide, you will get a link where you can try yourself. Next slide. So what we really target was a tool where it is very easy or useful to, to get very useful features. Next slide. Next, sorry. We had to be compliant with several policies, starting with the Swiss law, first of all, but also with international principle, not only FAIR principle, but also international standards, as we target really the international community. Next, please. And also we can customize this solution to the researchers' needs. So we are able to integrate this our solution to any research environment. Next slide, please. And a second facet of this DLCM project is also consulting and training activities at national level. So we offer an annual program for training sessions. We have between last year and this year about 6 training sessions, and each has about 15 or 20 to 20 researchers. We also have a DMP coaching in different institutions which were partner of the DLCM, mainly from dispense from the library. We also offer a lot tools, guide, and different resources. We have also on-demand training, so we can really customize the training. We are developing presently a MOOC, and that should be ready by the end of this year. And also we are going to offer certification. Next slide, please. So if you want more information, I provide you with different links, and also you can try EOLO's solution, which is this very long-term solution to archive research data. Thank you for your attention. So we can go to the next speaker.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is Giovanni Pizzi from EPFL in Switzerland. And in the last part of the presentation, I want to focus instead on the solution we've been developing for a specific sector, which is computational simulation, and in particular in material science. So in the next slide, I will mention the first platform, which is Materials Cloud, which is our portal for research data dissemination, but also to run simulations on the cloud. And in the next slide, I will not discuss on everything, but I will just focus on the first, on one section, which is what we call the Materials Cloud Archive, which is our first strategy for helping people develop data skills. That's a curated repository for hosting files related to publications, in particular the files needed to reproduce the calculations and the simulations. It's a standard technology. It's based on CERN Invenio version 3, and actually the repository itself is recommended by Nature Scientific Data and also the new Open Research Europe Journal of the European Commission. But in particular, it's a curated repository, which means when data comes in, there is a curation part, there is a moderation part, and this helps in a kind of it's a way to train researchers in how to improve their data and their data quality, because the moderator will suggest people how to improve the data formats and use formats which are open, and this is the advantage with respect to a general repository like, for instance, Zenodo. In the next slide, instead, I want to mention another approach which we have, which is to develop software tools and technologies to help researchers make sure the data they produce, in particular when running simulations, is reproducible and compliant with FAIR principles. And in particular, our software is called AIDA. It's a software to run high-throughput simulations, not only on local machines, but also automatically connecting to supercomputers and the HPC resources. And the key aspect of AIDA is that when AIDA runs the simulations for you, it will also track and store everything in the form of a graph by tracking what's called the provenance, so the history of each piece of data. And so you can go back to the actual data in the graph, and you can track how it was generated with all the inputs. And when you share it, anybody else can go and understand how data was generated. And in particular, we are also now actively investigating together with OpenBIS, the presentation you heard before by Henry Lutschke, how to put together the provenance of AIDA for simulations and the provenance of OpenBIS for experiments. And the next slide, I just want to highlight one important thing for making data easier to share is also to use standards and APIs. And in particular, I mentioned this effort. It's called Optimate. You can look it up if you're curious, which is a standard REST API that we've been developing with other 10 databases worldwide, that providing crystal structures in order to be able to search and query for crystal structures in a standard way, it's independent of which database you have. And so the data we provide in Materials Cloud is both served through this API, but also we have a client there that you can use to search for data even in other providers. And the next slide, I wanted just to mention that also all these services we are providing are also already part of the EOSC marketplace. We have two services. One is the cloud simulation, so running through AIDA directly in a browser. And the other one is the Materials Cloud Archive. They're already available and open to the world on EOSC. In the next slide, I wanted to mention two final strategies we have for training and data skills and research data management. The first one is to provide templates for data management plans to researchers. In a sense, we want to simplify their life, so if they submit their data to our repository or if they use AIDA, we provide already templates following the templates provided already by the Swiss National Science Foundation or the European Commission to help them fill in their data management plans. We tell them how long the data is stored and where it's stored and all the formats, etc. And in my final slide, I want to mention the last strategy, which is training events, so tutorials and workshops. We've been running actually over 15 workshops just in the last 2 years, both on the technology, on AIDA and the tools, but also on, in general, we always fit in some sessions in general on research data management. And last year in particular, we have also run, of course, these events online, and this has actually allowed us to even increase the audience. In particular, the last one we organized, we duplicated in 2 time zones. So we did run in the morning and then again in the afternoon. And in a single event, we could cover 13 different time zones. And in total, in the last 2 years, we have been able to cover and train over 500 people in our domain. And with this, I'd like to conclude the presentation.
Thank you. So thank you to those speakers already. That is a lot that is clearly going on there already in Switzerland. I did have perhaps one question, and I'm wondering perhaps, Aude, if you could come in and answer that for me. Just sort of beyond these projects, which sort of each individually are very fascinating, and I'm very happy we heard about them. There was one mention that I sort of picked up on. It was a very brief mention of, as these things are being developed, there is sometimes sort of the consideration of, okay, well, we have Swiss national law on the one hand, and we have international norms and standards, community norms and standards on the other hand. Could you comment in any way at all if you've had sort of discrepancies between those, and if it's been a challenge sort of to sort of square the circle, if any square had to be circled at some point?
Great question, quick answer. Well, legal questions are really very, very important in terms of training as well. There's more projects we've been funding as of recently who had specific webinars on legal questions. And it's not, I'm gonna not answer in full length out of time, but quickly speaking, let's say, yeah, the Swiss law is definitely in reflection with what's happening on the European and international level as well. So we've seen it with data protection law, how on the EU level it did impact in some ways on the Swiss level, but it's still being fine-tuned right now, so it does have an impact, and the legal questions are definitely should be also included in the training part for RDM and FAIR data skills particularly. It's not easy to answer your question quickly, but yes, there is an impact. Yes, there is training going on, but I think there will be even more in the future because it's rare to be able to give a clear-cut answer to some legal questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Just to briefly comment on that, I know it's just sort of an endless question that we could discuss, and hopefully maybe in the breakout groups we'll discuss.
Sure.
But I think it's really good to mention it indeed, that this is something to be aware of. So again, thank you for your presentations. I suggest we then move on. We are also joined by Patrick Helling from the University of Cologne in Germany. Patrick, the floor is all yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just let me share my screen. So now you should see my slides if everything works. No protests, good. So yeah, hello everybody, and thank you very much for having the opportunity to talk about Go Unite, the German chapter of the Data Stewardship Competence Center's implementation network, DSCCN, by Go FAIR, and I'm doing that also on behalf of my colleague Monica Linne, which is also coordinating this chapter the DSCCN. And before starting to talk about Go Unite, I would like to say a few words about the Data Stewardship Competence Center implementation network. So one of the starting points of this network was, of course, that there, as we all know, are many different institutions working within various structures and environments with regard to research data management that have individual research data management services and strategies, but very often have to deal with similar challenges. And there are many different factors that have an influence on the structures of these centers and of these institutions, for example, individual goals, institutional perspectives, different communities they have to deal with that instead of different demands, of course, and different competencies that are set in these institutions. So there seems to be a need for, of course, defining sustainable infrastructures to support researchers with regard to research data management. And one idea of this DSCCN was to bring together institutions and people from institutions to work together on solutions to tackle their challenges they have in their daily business and their daily work. So there was a founding meeting at the University of Leiden in December 2019. You see a picture of us at this evening. There were many different people from different countries that were part of this this workshop from, for example, Belgium, Brazil, Denmark, Germany, Ireland, and so on. And this is the main organization of this implementation network, but in general, it's also organized through national chapters. And yeah, before starting to talk about that, I just want to show you the main task that the DSCCN is working on. So the idea is to bring people together and work on increasing, of course, awareness of data stewardship and supporting a cultural change with regard to the FAIR principles within institutions, as well as, of course, supporting researchers with respect to the FAIR principles, developing data strategies and policies, defining requirements also of sustainable data stewardship infrastructures, defining service, qualification, job profiles, and establishing and bringing up a community or communication channels to just talk to other people that work in RDM institutions and have an interdisciplinary exchange. So the DSCCN tries to address all the three main areas of Go FAIR, which are Go Change, Go Train, and Go Build. And as I said, this is all organized, or the work is also done on the national level. So there are national chapters, and Go Unite is the German national chapter of the DSCCN. And yeah, the idea is to translate all these goals and tasks the DSCCN is addressing to a national and, of course, to an institutional level here in Germany. And we are trying to support the establishment of institutional and pragmatic RDM services and service structures, as well as providing a network, bringing people together from different institutions here in Germany that work on or that support research and researchers in questions on research data management. And to do so, we already had 2 meetings, a kickoff meeting in October 2020 and a first strategy meeting in February this year, where we welcomed more than 40 participants from very different institutions within the German research and research data management landscape, from different domains, infrastructures, and also many projects that are mainly data driven. And we started with an open discussion on central requirements. These people, these representatives of these institutions and projects have, and which goals they see, or what are the topics they could benefit and participating within this Go Unite community related to research data management. And so we try to define community-driven topics we should or could work on. And one of the central topics was that we identified that there are very many regional and national initiatives already and networks that work on different topics with regard to research data management and some FAIR data skills and all these topics. And we recognize this thing especially because we were thinking about starting to collect and connect materials for RDM training, for for training materials for FAIR data skills, supporting FAIR data skills, and we saw that there are many initiatives that already work on that topic on a national level. And so we, of course, wanted to avoid reinventing the wheel. And so we thought it would be a very good idea to try to bring all these national initiatives that do parallel work in some cases together and to work together. For example, the NFDI consortia, which are representatives of the upcoming national research data infrastructure here in Germany, as well as people from universities, from different working groups and initiatives that that collect, for example, this materials and RDM training materials, as well as offering this training and support as well. And our main idea is to have a general basis where we probably work together on a central document with a common standard metadata scheme, for example, just to obtain a complete overview of all existing materials and programs within this context. And we already started with that and contacted a few initiatives that also do this work. And now we are working on having a general meeting where all these people come together, not on a desk, but in a Zoom meeting, of course, and try to figure out how we can bring all together these initiatives. Another requirement we identified within the context of this group of Go Unite was that there are so many, as I already mentioned, so many institutions with different structures regarding to RDM services and that have to deal with different RDM requirements from researchers, that we thought that it could be very helpful to probably build something like a comprehensive description model of demands, of requirements regarding to research data management, as well as for workflows within the German RDM landscape, so that probably the demand and the workflow landscape with regard to research data management is probably more measurable, and we can just supporting researchers in a more goal-oriented way, probably. So our idea is to discuss or have a forum where we can discuss existing RDM structures and workflows, as well as requirements, and try to come closer to some kind of abstract description model for this concepts and for these requirements. And we started to evaluate, and we try to map already existing models within the German research data management landscapes. And we are right now planning a workshop for July this year, where we want to invite representatives from different service institutions and RDM contact points that should bring in their description, their point of views on services they are offering, to take that as a basis for starting to probably build up or try to agree to an abstract description model on RDM concepts and requirements. And the last thing we identified within our community was that there is a big need of more internationalization with regard to RDM topics. So we are planning to support, build up a continuous exchange with different RDM experts and data stewards, for example, from different countries and different institutions, and have a stronger connection to the Go FAIR DSCC implementation network. And so by doing that, we want to, for example, invite the coordinators of the DCCN to the upcoming Go Unite meeting, and just have an input from different perspectives from different countries. So the idea is that Go Unite is of course, kind of national network, but it's constituted by its representatives, it's constituted by representatives from different local RDM institutions and centers and projects and infrastructures that bring into this community their tasks, their challenges they have to deal with at their home institutions, and we try to build up a network where we try to find solutions within these people, within these representatives in this community, so that they can carry these solutions and this, for example, best practices and standards we maybe develop within this context back to their home institutions, and support researchers with regard to research data management in a probably better way. So from our perspective, we hope that Go Unite is so effective, or will be effective, because the focus is on requirements defined by its own community, by research data management experts, and people that have to deal with RDM questions, and that there are solutions developed by this community as well. So this is our approach, and as you have seen, we just started, so we're looking forward what will happen this and the next years, of course, but we are a bit optimistic that there will be some benefits, at least for research data manager, data stewards, and all this stuff. So thank you very much for your attention. Everyone was in time. Yeah, and I'm happy to receive your questions.
That is, again, thank you for that presentation. I think it really speaks to sort of the richness and the extensiveness of the initiative that you're developing. I'm not immediately seeing questions in the chat. I'm hoping there will be in the breakout sessions. I did have one thing I was wondering, just sort of for my own benefit. I was sort of almost bewildered by the photo of the launch, where sort of everybody was together, and then I saw, oh, that's December 2019, just before everything happened. Could you comment then, after the crisis started and we all had to move online and were confined to our own countries, how has that experience been to sort of keep this going now that we couldn't sort of meet up anymore in real life? Has there been any challenges, or has that been a very smooth transition?
Well, it was challenging, of course, because since the start of 2020, nothing could ever happen in place, of course, as we all know. And we were thinking about having the kickoff meeting for Go Unite in April 2020, and we canceled that very quickly, because we had we thought, well, maybe when we just do it a little bit later, we can do it in person, right? Meet each other at a university institution and have a good time. But of course, that didn't happen. So everything was just happened a little bit later than it was planned. But after we started with the Go Unite network, building it up, it was well, I wouldn't say it was easy, but there was a big opportunity, of course. And I think we all see this opportunity that having all these Zoom meetings and online meetings, even more people can participate in events like that and don't have to travel somewhere. So this was a big benefit, if you want so. Mm-hmm. And right now it's hard to keep the people to be in touch with the people all the time, of course. And for example, bringing together some initiatives or some ideas. For example, the workshop we are planning for the description model for RDM. Of course, that is hard to organize, or harder to organize when you're not together. But I think, as we all do, we try to figure out that. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to sort of hear about that experience as well. So again, thank you for your presentation. Thank you also to the other presenters. I think I've learned quite a few things in terms of what's going on and what the context is for them. I'm now going to hand it over to my colleagues, who will take us into the next session.
Thanks a lot, Brecht. I think I'll go next with talk about the report that was released a couple of months ago. Digital Skills for FAIR and Open Science report from the EOSC Executive Board Skills and Training Working Group, and Celia van Gelder is also on the call, who was a member of the working group. This report includes 4 priority areas, and I'll be curious to hear your feedback, because I hope many of you read it already. So we looked at how together we could develop the next generation of FAIR and open science professionals. How could we collaborate to enhance digital skills for FAIR and open science in Europe? How we could build a trusted and sustainable knowledge hub of learning resources and tools. And I don't know why I have trusted twice. I guess it's important, really important. And then how we could influence national open science policy for skills by supporting strategic leadership. Report includes 7 recommendations. We suggest a list of EOSC actors and skills profiles and training needs. It could be used to develop EOSC-related skills and training, coordinating and aligning relevant skills, curriculum and training frameworks. We looked at competence centers approach as an interesting ways that could support skills building and competence building in institutions, in countries and research infrastructures. And then how could we build a catalog of training and learning materials and include it in the EOSC? And then this recommendation number 7, I think, is really important. And we already had a discussion about that earlier today. How could we develop EOSC skills and training leadership program that would help with coordinating, also develop and promote skills and training ambassadors programs to advance national developments. And then how could we advocate together to include skills and training on FAIR and open science into major European and national funding instruments? So these are 10 roles within the EOSC ecosystem that we identified, and we also provided some examples and list of required skills. We looked at existing competence centers, and some of you today participated in interviews with us. Thanks a lot for that. So we talked to universities and research libraries, research infrastructures, national initiatives, and also professional associations. And we used FAIRsFAIR Competence Center outline as a basis for our discussions. And what was interesting that almost all competence centers provide a broad range of services. In addition to training, there are also services on guidance resources and advisory services, including policy advice and policy implementation, development of communities, communities of trainers, but also communities of researchers skilled and active in advocacy for FAIR and open science skills and competencies, catalogs, standards, evaluation and assessment services, and collaboration hubs. And in our interviews, we covered this range of topics from skills and competences focused to organizational models, how these competence centers were set up, what governance structures, business models, sustainability approaches, and what recommendations are there on alignment and collaborations nationally and also on the European level. And we have a section on recommendations for EOSC learning and training catalog implementation, but that's a bit out of scope for today's meeting, so I'll just skip those slides, and if you're interested, you could have a look. And National Skills Policies and Strategies chapter was contributed by LDK consultants who were commissioned to look at national digital skills landscape. And what you can see on the slide was already mentioned earlier today, that unfortunately we see this fragmentation of governance and diverse priorities in upgrading skills, and we could notice that across sectors, also at the national basis, and a lot is going on, but there is still lack of alignment, at least in those countries where the LDK consultants did the research. And then national policies on competence building are still lacking. And of course, on the one hand, it's really hard to identify a common approach because it's not possible to have this one-size-fits-all approach. But another issue is that responsibility for digital skills are scattered around different ministries and different national bodies. It doesn't help with coordination, and it would be really helpful if there are national strategies. Then national strategies for digital skills are also lacking, and there are some developments, but not like fully refined policies. And then, of course, digital skills ecosystem is complex because today we're talking about universities, but there are also many more other players, and it adds to complexities. Lack of rewards for researchers, career paths in this area not very clear. And when we look at national open science strategies, they talk a lot about infrastructures, but not many of them really focus on digital skills. And it was excellent to hear examples today from the countries that do talk, because that's important. And then lack of reusable models on fair and open science in universities, and little coordination. LDK consultant suggested this maturity level approach to assess country readiness, and they had this scale from 1 to 4, where 1 is existence of awareness, 2 is exploration stage, 3 is development stage, and then 4 is when developments are fully integrated in national policies and workflows, and they used this maturity model to assess different developments in the countries. And these are some of the questions that they looked at. Rewards, standardization of digital skills profiles, legislation on digital skills, reusable models on fair and open science in universities, academic education on data science engineering, accreditation systems, whether digital skills initiatives are part of national policies, cross-sector collaborations, fair and open science and AI and cybersecurity, and then existence of formal policies and skills and trainings, collaborations between public and private sectors, existence of national platforms, training provision, advanced learning environments, and coordination of central governance mechanism. And some of the recommendations are how these gaps could be addressed in further activities. It would be good to have this EOSC Skills and Training Leadership Program that would help with coordination and advocate for inclusion of FAIR and open science skills in the national agenda. And then this maturity model exercise could be used to assess current level of developments, and it would be wonderful to have coordination and alignment in developing skills and training curricula in higher education institutions across Europe. And of course, it would be wonderful if there is an aligned rewards and recognition framework in Europe. And then if digital upskilling agenda could be complemented with existing support networks. And of course, there is a question of governance structures in that case. And perhaps some of those questions could be addressed by the EOSC Association. Thank you.
Many thanks, Irina. So Celia already shared also here in the chat the link for the report.
Can I ask a question, Pedro, please?
Yes, please.
It's actually also maybe to Irina, because I think that the report from LDK, I mean, in our report, it's very brief. It's the summary of all their work. And I think that their more extended version of their reports are also, I think, on Zenodo. And I think they could be very interesting, especially for the people here today. Do you know if they are available?
Yes, they're available, and I'll find the links and I'll add them to shared notes document and to the chat as well. That's a very good point. Thanks a lot, Celia.
Thanks.
Okay, if you have any other question, so Irina can reply, but in the meantime, I will just move to the breakout discussion. We can have a break now, just to inform you, but let's move. And now is that moment that we need you, because usually, so for this kind of workshop, so we hear these great presentations, and then we have other issues to do, to manage the email, to check, etc. But I think it's good if we spend 20-25 minutes more participating in an informed debate. Let's see if I can convince you to stay with us. So we will open now four groups. You will choose the group that you want to join. Mainly 3 topics, but we have one group. We don't want to have much more than 12-15 persons per group. Let's see. This is free to join. So we have 2 groups. On the focus is on the national initiatives. Some of them presented here. Group 1 and Group 2. Then Group 3 is for the focus is for the institutional initiatives that our focus was in the second session, but we can share their experiences, and the other one, the community-driven initiative. So we heard about some different initiatives here connected with this kind of different groups. So what we want really is to discuss with you for 25 minutes what is working, what works well, what doesn't work, lessons learned from our initiatives, share some experiences, good practices, impact, and how can we leverage those kinds of initiatives at the national level, institutional, community-driven. So I will open this just for you to know. So we are all responsible to the good way that the groups we will have it, the groups. So we have moderators. So you will see Irina Kushman in Group 1. You will see Claudia from Göttingen University, that is also part from FAIRsFAIR team in Group 2. Institutional with Bert, and myself will be in the community-driven initiatives. Okay, we really just want to have 2-3 minutes just to finish, and I will ask my colleagues Bert and Irina if they want to join me just to final comments. So I think it's good if we have 1 minute per for us if you want to say something to conclude, at least from the group that I was participating. The discussion was quite fruitful, and I think there are lots of things to work and to play, and there is really the need to share experiences and to share training resources, to learn from some experiences. There's some to share I think that what we did today, mixing the national initiatives with some institutional initiatives, is really great. The idea of starting sharing also the different national experiences is important. So in our group we discussed that so maybe now it's time also for those that are doing things at the national level, start communicating with each other in order to share some strategies, experiences, good practices, and then there is also this balance between the top down approach and the bottom up approach for the domain specific communities. That is also important to manage. But I was quite happy with the results of the discussion. There are some notes which will be helpful for us. So any comment from you, from Irina and Bert, and then we can close this meeting.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, please.
No, I was in the third group at sort of institutional level. I think it's sort of Pedro, in many ways sort of the same discussion, sort of a lot of questions about sort of people starting out on the process of sort of setting up their own initiatives and asking sort of very specific questions about seeing more advanced initiatives. And it's okay, but where did that start exactly? And it's sort of a very good back and forth, I think, in terms of not just mentioning that you know, where do you start? You know, you look at the networks that are already existing at the institutional, the national level. You try and leverage those networks. It is a sort of an incremental effort. That is a team effort. But I think we also spent quite a bit of time sort of drawing out lessons from the presentations that were perhaps not explicit, but once you start looking for them, are definitely in there across different presentations. I'm thinking, for example, where it was discussed for a while, is that how do you bring people on board, researchers? You know, you really focus on sort of what is the direct usefulness to them. How do you explain to a researcher why would they bother, why would they care, and how do you make it as easy as possible? Once you think of that, you do start seeing that in a lot of presentations that we saw that these are things that are always in there in these initiatives. It's just very good to draw them out. So I think we had a very good discussion. Obviously, we wanted to discuss a little bit longer, but we ran out of time. I think we didn't sort of get into then, I think, sort of, you know, that there is a very competitive environment out there. So there's a relation to incentives and rewards. How do those come in play, especially at the individual level? How do you use them? But also, for example, something we haven't really touched on, it was only mentioned, is sort of disciplinary differences. You know, that is sort of the next step. There are some disciplines that are more advanced than others when it comes to sort of research data management, on average, at the very least. So I think it was really quite a good discussion just starting it, but clearly there is more needed. And I think a lot of the presentations sort of were right on track of answering some of the questions that the participants had.
Thank you.
Yeah, we also talked about rewards and incentives, and also a bit about funding, and especially about cases where there isn't much funding or there won't be much funding, and how you could still build skills without additional funding available. And we ended up acknowledging that it would be good to be honest when we talk to researchers about practicing fair data or open science, that it takes time, and it's an effort, and there are lots of benefits, but there are also challenges, and researchers need to invest into that. That's important, not to fool them that it's easier.
Yeah, great. Many thanks. So wait for a message from us that we are going to send to all participants with the presentations, and that you, in fact, you already have it, but also with the recordings and the notes. Just before we finish, just for you to be aware of these two initiatives that Berg already present, but I think it's relevant to put it how clearly is the book sprint that we have in FAIRsFAIR. So if you want to participate, so you can apply until May 3rd to be a book sprinter, to collaborate with FAIRsFAIR in this work. And we also have this FAIR data competencies in doctoral education programs workshop, 2 half days in the end of May. So just join us for these two upcoming initiatives in FAIRsFAIR, and so we stay in touch. And I think we can close the meeting. I don't know if Bert want to say something, but so really happy to have you until the end. We know that how we are, so with lots of events, so many thanks. So if we just keep the meeting open. If you want to copy something from the chat, you can do it, and in fact you can copy the chat, and so many thanks, and thank you for the team that have organized this between FAIRsFAIR and OpenAIRE. I think it was a great initiative, and hope that we can continue some discussions in FAIRsFAIR or in the training standing committee in OpenAIRE and in OpenAIRE members. Okay, many thanks.
Same, just from my side also, a big thank you to everyone, and I won't draw it out any longer. So we're hoping to welcome you again at these other events. But for now, thank you, especially to the speakers for their contribution, but also the participants for attending and for your questions.
Yeah, many thanks for the speakers' effort. Bye-bye. Thank you all.
Thanks a lot.